There's a moment each day when your conscious mind drops its guard. A silent portal opens between you and the deepest layers of your psyche. And it's in this moment, in those minutes before sleep, that you have access to a transformative power that most people completely ignore. Carl Jung taught us that the unconscious never sleeps. It works, processes, and reorganizes. And when you whisper the right words at this threshold between waking and sleeping, something extraordinary happens. You plant seeds directly into the soil of your soul. Today I'm going to reveal the 7 words that, when spoken aloud before sleep, can rewrite your reality from the inside out. This isn't cheap self-help. It's not forced positive thinking. This is the science of the unconscious applied in a practical and profound way. These words aren't magical by themselves. They are portals. And when you understand the power they carry, you'll never sleep the same way again. So stay until the end, because this could be the video that divides your life into before and after. And go ahead and subscribe to the channel, because here we dive deep into what Jung really discovered about human transformation. Jung spent decades studying altered states of consciousness, and one of his most important discoveries was about what he called the twilight of the mind. That moment when the ego relaxes and the self can emerge with greater freedom. During the day, your conscious mind is in command. It filters, analyzes, and controls. But when you prepare for sleep, this vigilance diminishes. And that's exactly when the unconscious becomes more receptive to profound changes. Think about the hypnagogic state, that zone between falling asleep and waking up. Neuroscientists have discovered that in this moment, the brain produces theta waves, the same ones present during deep meditation. Your critical mind quiets down, and information can be absorbed directly by the unconscious. Jung said, "Night after night we descend into the unconscious, and it's there that true transformations happen, not in the noise of day, but in the silence of darkness." But there's a crucial detail that most people miss. The quality of the last information you offer your mind before sleep determines the tone of all the nighttime processing. If you fall asleep with anxiety, anger, or worry, that's what the unconscious processes all night long. But if you offer words of healing, integration, and truth, your psyche works with this material during sleep. It's like preparing the soil before planting. The words you choose are seeds. And sleep is the period of silent germination. It wasn't by chance that I chose these 7 words. I welcome, accept, trust, surrender, forgive, thank, good night. Each one corresponds to a fundamental aspect of the individuation process. That is, the path to becoming who you really are. The human psyche constantly seeks balance and completeness. But this process only happens when you stop resisting what is, and begin to integrate all parts of yourself, including those you'd rather ignore. These words aren't just sounds, they're direct instructions to the unconscious, gentle commands that guide your soul toward a state of inner harmony. When you say "I" before sleep, you're affirming your existence beyond the roles you play. When you whisper "welcome," you're creating internal space for all parts of yourself. Accept dissolves resistance. Trust liberates you from obsessive control. Surrender allows the natural healing process to happen. Forgive cleanses old wounds. And thank elevates your vibration to a frequency of abundance. Each word is a key that opens a different door in your psyche. And when you speak them in this state of maximum receptivity, they penetrate layers that remain inaccessible during the day. The simplest word, and perhaps the most powerful. When you whisper "I" before sleep, you're recognizing yourself as pure existence, beyond all roles, masks, and expectations. During the day, you're a son, father, professional, friend. You perform, comply, adapt. But who is the I behind all of that? Jung called this the self, the truest core of your identity, the one that exists independent of any social role. When you say "I" in the silence of night, you're contacting this essence. Not the me that needs to please, not the me that fears rejection, not the me that carries old guilt. The pure I. The silent observer that has always been there, watching your life unfold. This word is a declaration of presence. It's like saying, "I exist. I am real, and I have the right to be here." For those who've spent their lives diminishing themselves, erasing themselves, or hiding, whispering "I" before sleep is an act of silent courage. Jung said that individuation, The process of becoming who you are begins with recognizing the self. And there's no more direct way to do this than affirming your existence in the moment when all defenses are down. Many people are afraid of this word, because recognizing the true I means taking responsibility for your life. It means stopping hiding behind circumstances, people, or excuses. It means looking into the mirror of the soul and saying, "This is me, and I matter." When you whisper I in the darkness, you're planting the seed of genuine self-worth. Not the kind that depends on achievements or approval, but the kind born from the simple recognition that you exist. And that's already enough. To welcome is to create internal space. It's like opening the doors of your home to receive a guest, except the guest is all the parts of yourself you've learned to reject. For Jung, most human suffering comes from internal fragmentation. We reject pieces of ourselves that we consider unacceptable, push aspects we judge as negative into the shadow, and try to live only with the good parts. But the psyche doesn't work that way. It demands integration, not perfection. When you whisper welcome before sleep, you're sending a message to the unconscious. Everything I am has space here. Not just the successes, but also the failures. Not just the joy, but also the sadness. Not just the strength, but also the vulnerability. Welcoming doesn't mean agreeing with everything. It's creating a safe internal container where all your experiences can exist without judgment. It's like being a loving parent to yourself. One who doesn't reject the child when they make mistakes, but offers comfort until they calm down. The word welcome works specifically with the Jungian shadow, that part of the personality you reject and project onto others. When you stop fighting against unwanted aspects of yourself and begin to welcome them with compassion, something profound reorganizes itself. The anger you've always suppressed can finally be felt and integrated. The old sadness you carried on your back can be cried out and released. The fear you pretended not to have can be acknowledged and transformed into wisdom. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And the first step toward that understanding is welcoming, stopping the fight against who you are and beginning to embrace all your complexities." When you whisper welcome in the silence of night, you're practicing unconditional love for yourself, and unconditional love is the most transformative force that exists. Accepting is different from welcoming. Welcoming creates space. Accepting means stopping resistance. It's ceasing to fight against reality and beginning to work with it. Resistance is one of the greatest sources of suffering. You suffer not just from what happens, but from not wanting it to happen. Not just from pain, but from rejecting the pain. Not just from loss, but from not accepting that losses are part of life. Jung observed that the psyche has its own wisdom. It takes you exactly where you need to go, even when the path hurts. And when you stop resisting this process, you discover there's an intelligence operating behind the events of your life. When you whisper, "accept" before sleep, you're surrendering to this intelligence. You're saying, "I don't need to understand everything. I don't need to control everything. I can trust the process, even when it doesn't make sense to my limited mind." This word works directly with the ego, the part of you that always wants to be in control. The ego fears acceptance because it believes that accepting means giving up. But it's the opposite. Accepting means releasing energy that was trapped in resistance so it can flow toward solutions. Accepting isn't passivity, it's wisdom. It's recognizing that there are things you can change and things beyond your control, and having the serenity to distinguish between them. When you accept a loss, you can begin to integrate the lessons it brought. When you accept a mistake, you can extract wisdom from it to avoid repeating it. When you accept a limitation, you can find creative ways to work with it. The word accept, whispered in the dark, is like a key that unlocks doors that have been closed for years. Doors you yourself locked with resistance. And when those doors open, you discover that on the other side there weren't monsters. There were pieces of yourself waiting to come home. Trusting is perhaps the hardest word for those who have been hurt. For those who learned that the world is dangerous, that people disappoint, that you can only count on yourself. But Jung pointed out a difference between trusting people and trusting the process. When you whisper, "trust," before sleep, you're not necessarily saying you trust everyone. You're saying you trust life. That there's an underground current of meaning operating even when everything seems chaotic. That there exists a greater wisdom. Jung would call it the self, or collective unconscious, that's guiding your path. Trust isn't naivety. It's courage. It's the courage to live without needing guarantees. to open yourself to possibilities even knowing you might be disappointed, to bet on life even after losing several times. Jung saw life as a process of individuation, a journey toward wholeness, and he observed that even in the most difficult periods, there was always an intelligence operating to take the person to the next level of development. But only those who trust can perceive this intelligence in action. When you stop trying to control every detail and begin to trust the natural flow of life, something magical happens. You stop swimming against the current and discover that the current was taking you exactly where you needed to arrive. The word trust whispered in the silence of night is like letting go of the reins of a horse that knows the way better than you do. Is it dangerous? It might be. But it's also the only way to reach places you never imagined you could reach. Trusting is an act of faith. Not necessarily religious faith, but faith in life. Faith that even when everything seems to be going wrong, there's a bigger plan unfolding. And you're an essential part of that plan. Surrendering is the opposite of giving up. Giving up means stopping trying. Surrendering means stopping controlling. It's recognizing that there are greater forces operating and that you don't need to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Jung spoke about the importance of distinguishing between will and surrender. Will is necessary to act, to position yourself, to do your part. But surrender is necessary to allow the results to be greater than you could imagine. When you whisper surrender before sleep, you're releasing the obsessive need to control how things should happen. You're saying, I do my part, but the outcome doesn't depend only on me. This word works directly with anxiety, that anguish that comes from trying to predict and control all possible scenarios. Anxiety is born from the illusion that you can and must control everything. But life is much more complex and mysterious than any individual mind can encompass. Surrendering doesn't mean being passive. It means acting with presence, giving your best, and then trusting that the universe will conspire in favor of what's best for everyone involved. Even if you can't see how that's going to happen. Jung observed that many of the greatest transformations in his life happened not when he forced changes, but when he surrendered to the natural process of development, when he stopped fighting against what was emerging and allowed his life to be reorganized by a greater wisdom. The word surrender whispered in the dark is like a silent prayer. It's saying, I trust that there's something greater than me operating here, and I surrender to this force with love and gratitude. When you truly surrender, you discover you were never alone. That there's an invisible support network, Jung would call it synchronicities, that begins to operate in your favor when you stop trying to do everything alone. Forgiving is perhaps the most misunderstood word. Most people think forgiving means accepting the unacceptable, or pretending that something that hurt didn't hurt. But Jung had a much deeper view of forgiveness. For him, forgiving isn't about the other person. It's about you. It's about freeing your energy from situations that have already passed so you can invest it in the present. It's about stopping carrying poison, hoping the other person dies poisoned. When you whisper forgive before sleep, you're doing a deep, energetic cleansing. You're releasing old grudges, stored resentments, accumulated anger, not because the person deserves it, but because you deserve to live free. Jung discovered that the unconscious doesn't understand linear time. For it, a grudge from 10 years ago can be as alive as something that happened yesterday. And while you carry these energies from the past, they contaminate your ability to fully live the present. Forgiveness is actually a form of personal liberation. When you forgive, you stop spending mental energy reliving old situations and have that energy available to create something new. But there's an even deeper aspect: forgiving yourself. Jung observed that most of the guilt we carry doesn't come from terrible things we did, but from not being able to be perfect, from being human, from making mistakes, failing, disappointing. When you whisper forgive in the silence of night, you're including in that forgiveness all the old versions of yourself. The you who made wrong decisions, the you who didn't know how to stand up for yourself, the you who hurt people you loved, the you who wasn't strong enough. Forgiving yourself is perhaps the most transformative act that exists, because when you stop punishing yourself for being imperfect in the past, you can finally begin to be authentic in the present. The word forgive, whispered in the dark, is like rain washing the soul. It's an energetic cleansing that frees up space for new things to be born, where before there was only accumulated pain. Gratitude is the highest frequency the human soul can reach. Not forced gratitude, not positive thinking that denies difficulties, but deep gratitude that recognizes that even the most difficult experiences contributed to who you became. Jung observed that the psyche has a natural tendency to focus on what's missing, what went wrong, what still needs to be resolved. It's a useful survival mechanism, but it can become a prison if you don't also develop the ability to recognize what has already been achieved. When you whisper thank before sleep, you're reprogramming your mind to perceive abundance where before you only saw scarcity. You're training your attention to capture what's working, not just what's broken. But the gratitude Jung proposed goes beyond what's easy to be grateful for. It's gratitude for the wounds that taught you compassion, for the mistakes that gave you wisdom, for the losses that showed you what really matters, for the betrayals that taught you to trust yourself. This is alchemical gratitude, the kind that transforms lead into gold, suffering into wisdom, painful experiences into inner strength. When you can be grateful not just for the good things, but for the complete process of your life, including the parts that hurt, something rises within you. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become an alchemist of experiences. The word thank, whispered in the darkness, is like a bell that resonates through all layers of your soul. It's a recognition that your life, however imperfect it may be, is a gift, and that you have the privilege of being here, consciously participating in this mystery called existence. Jung said that gratitude is the emotion that brings human beings closest to the sacred, because when you truly give thanks, you recognize that there's much more happening in your life than just your personal efforts. There's a conspiracy of factors, people, circumstances, synchronicities, that came together to allow you to be exactly where you are. What I'm about to say may seem simple, but good night is much more than a polite formula. It's a blessing. It's a wish that the rest period beginning will truly be good. Regenerating, healing, transformative. Sleep isn't just physical rest. It's when the unconscious takes command and reorganizes the day's experiences. It's when dreams bring symbolic messages. It's when the soul processes emotions, integrates learnings, and prepares for a new dawn. When you whisper good night after going through this entire ritual of self-welcoming, you're intentionally sealing the process. You're saying, now I can rest. I've consciously done my part. The rest I surrender to the mystery of sleep. It's like giving a farewell hug to the day that passed, and a welcoming hug to the renewal that's coming. It's recognizing that each night is a small symbolic death. You release waking consciousness and trust in the regenerating darkness. Jung believed that night is when the soul reconnects with its deepest origins. It's when you access layers of the psyche that remain inaccessible during the day. And when you enter this state with loving intention, after having welcomed, accepted, forgiven, and given thanks, sleep itself becomes a sacred act. Good night is actually a declaration of faith. Faith that you can let go of control, that you can trust the natural process of regeneration, that you can allow forces greater than your conscious mind to take care of you while you rest. Now that you understand the power of each word, I'll explain how to implement this practice effectively. It's not just mechanically repeating the words, it's creating a conscious ritual of transformation. First, prepare the environment. Turn off all screens at least 30 minutes before sleep. Jung knew that the mind needs time to slow down. Create a quiet, dark, welcoming environment. This is your nighttime temple. Second, adopt a comfortable position. Lie down so you can completely relax. Close your eyes and breathe deeply 3 times. Feel your body surrendering to the mattress. Allow the day's tension to dissolve. Third, speak each word with intention. It doesn't need to be loud. A whisper is enough. But speak each word consciously, feeling its meaning reverberate in your chest. I welcome. Open internal space for all parts of yourself. Imagine yourself embracing your own complexity. I accept. Release resistance to what was, what is, what's to come. I trust. Surrender to life's wisdom. Even when you don't understand the path, I surrender. Let go of the need to control. Allow greater forces to operate. I forgive. Release old grudges and forgive yourself for being imperfect. I thank. Recognize the blessings, including those disguised as challenges. Good night. Seal the ritual with a blessing for the sleep that begins. Fourth, stay present. After speaking the words, don't force sleep. Simply remain in a receptive state. If thoughts appear, observe them without judgment and gently return to the feeling of each word. Fifth, be consistent. Like any transformative practice, this requires consistency. Jung said the unconscious responds to conscious repetition. Do this practice for at least 21 consecutive days and observe the subtle changes that begin to emerge. This isn't a magical practice that will solve all problems overnight. It's a tool for gradual reprogramming of the unconscious. Jung taught that profound changes happen in layers, and that's what you can expect. In the first nights, you might feel only greater relaxation. Sleep quality may improve. Perhaps you'll wake up more rested, with a subtle sense of peace. In the first week, you'll likely begin to notice changes in dreams. They may become more vivid, more symbolic. Jung said that when the unconscious is being fed with positive intentions, it responds through dreams. In the first month, deeper transformations begin to emerge. You might notice you react differently to situations that used to destabilize you. You might perceive that you're more tolerant of your own imperfections. Old patterns of self-sabotage may begin to lose their grip. After 3 months of consistent practice, the change may be noticeable to other people. You might radiate a different peace, a more centered presence. Relationships may improve because you're relating to yourself in a more loving way. Long term, this practice can contribute to what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you really are. You might discover that you no longer need others' approval in the same way, that you can sustain your own presence even in challenging environments, that you've developed a kind of unconditional love for yourself. But remember, each person is unique. Your process will be unique. What matters isn't comparing with others, but observing with curiosity the subtle changes that emerge in your own experience. Carl Jung revolutionized our understanding of the human mind by discovering that we have layers of consciousness far beyond what we perceive day to day. He showed that the unconscious isn't just a repository of forgotten memories, but a living source of wisdom and creativity. Jung always emphasized that working with the unconscious must be practical, not just theoretical. He created techniques like active imagination and dream work because he knew that intellectual understanding isn't enough. It requires direct engagement with the deep layers of the psyche. This practice of 7 words would be, in Jung's view, a way to feed the unconscious with transformative intentions. It's like planting seeds of healing that germinate in the silence of night and blossom in conscious life. There's something profoundly mysterious happening when you commit to a practice like this. Jung spoke about synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that seem to respond to our internal states. And many people who adopt this practice report that life begins to conspire in their favor in inexplicable ways. Maybe it's because when you're at peace with yourself, you perceive opportunities that previously went unnoticed. Maybe it's because when you radiate a frequency of self-love, you attract situations and people that resonate with that frequency. Or maybe there's something deeper happening, something science doesn't yet fully understand. But Jung intuited that individual consciousness and external reality are more interconnected than we imagine. What I know is that words have power, especially when spoken with intention, in the state of maximum receptivity that precedes sleep. They're not just sounds, they're vibrations that reorganize internal reality. And when internal reality changes, the external eventually follows. Jung said, "Those who look outside, dream. Those who look inside, awaken." This practice is an invitation to look inside, to consciously nourish the inner garden, to become the gardener of your own soul. If you've made it this far, it wasn't by chance. Something in you recognizes that these words carry transformative power, that there's ancient wisdom being offered through an apparently simple practice. Jung taught us that individuation, the process of becoming who we really are, is the most important work of human life. And this work doesn't just happen during the day, in conscious action. It also happens in the quiet of night, in the silent spaces where the soul can finally speak. You don't need to believe it will work. You just need to be willing to experiment, to offer your unconscious, night after night, these seeds of healing. I welcome, accept, trust, surrender, forgive, thank, good night, and then observe, with curiosity, with patience, with love for yourself. Because true transformation doesn't happen with violence. It happens with gentleness, not with rush, but with persistence. Not by forcing changes, but by creating conditions for them to emerge naturally. Your soul already knows how to heal itself. It was just waiting for you to create space for that to happen. And this space opens, whisper by whisper, night after night, word by word. So begin today, tonight. Lie down in peace, close your eyes, and offer to the mystery of your own depth the only words that really matter, those that come from the heart and reach the soul. If this video touched something inside you, if it made sense in a way you might not even be able to fully explain, leave in the comments. I am ready to transform my reality. That phrase is more than a comment. It's a commitment to yourself. It's a declaration that you choose to consciously participate in your own healing. And if you want to keep diving into this universe of deep self-knowledge, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, we continue exploring Jung's teachings in practical, real, transformative ways. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. Every person who chooses to look inward, who commits to their own healing, contributes to collective healing. Jung said that when one individual becomes more conscious, all humanity benefits. Your silent practice, your words whispered in the dark, your commitment to your own transformation, all of this matters, more than you imagine. Sleep well, dream deep, and allow these 7 words to be the beginning of a new story. The story of who you can truly become when you stop resisting the love that already exists within you. See you in the next video.